Hello and welcome to Film Seizure. Today we are covering 1981's feature film debut by Michael Mann, Thief. With me, as always, we have Jeff Arbuckle. Say hi, Jeff Arbuckle.
Hey, how's it going, Chuck? Doing great? I'm doing great.
Good. And Jason Oliver.
Hey, I'm doing well as well. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm
excited to talk about Steve.
Steve. Yeah, my voice remote would not recognize that I was saying thief, so it wanted me to watch a movie called Steve that doesn't exist.
Technology is not that great.
We can't find anything named Steve.
What kind of movie name is Steve, anyway? So this is the first... Hey, you guys will be surprised by this, because this is the first time I've seen Thief in probably 30 years.
So you had seen this?
Yeah, I guess 30 years is a lie. After The Dark Knight and the Batman series came out, I read a lot about how it was inspired by Michael Mann's Heat, which I had seen before, so I watched Heat again, and then I watched some of Michael Mann's other stuff. So I had seen this. I didn't remember it very well. Jeff, this was a pick by you. Is this a favorite or just something you wanted to do?
I just thought it would be worthy to do more than anything. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like I had seen it years ago, probably sometime in the 90s. And I always liked it. I always knew it was very, very well liked. And it was one that I picked up during a Criterion Collection sale. And so I thought, well, hey, I bet the other guys would like this too.
Yeah, we do. In fact, I have the same Criterion. I like Michael Mann, most of his movies quite a bit, especially Heat and Manhunter. But I like this one a lot too. It's probably my third favorite of his. And yeah, I was very excited to talk about this. I saw this probably the first time in the 90s as well. Jeff probably was a video store rental at some point. Probably after I saw Heat, actually. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, I too bought the Criterion Blu-ray when it came out, which is interesting because that's one of those releases, one of those director-approved releases on Criterion that's got a lot of controversy around it because he went back in and color corrected it. So it's not the original color tinting and hues that was in the original theatrical release, which kind of annoys purists. Me, it doesn't bother me. There are some moments where it's a little dark, where it's kind of hard to see the contrast and what's going on. I don't know if that was part of the color correction or not, but yeah, he kind of gave it a blue tint, a blue hue to kind of match some of his later films like Heat. This sort of become a little bit of his cinematic photography style, is kind of give it that sort of noirish blue.
I don't have anything to add to that, but I will say that I always remember the poster and box art with what looks like fireworks reflecting off of him.
Super cool.
Which is a really, really cool scene later anyway, with the magnesium rod. But yeah, so no,
I'm glad you knew what that thing was, because I had no idea.
It is.
I was just gonna call it a blowtorch.
It's I could have called it I could have called it the inanimate carbon rod and make it the employee of the month at the power plant. There's a Simpsons deep cut. But anyway. Let's hear it for the inanimate carbon rod. No, it is a magnesium rod. What that process, I actually read about this a little bit on Wikipedia. When we get to it, we'll explain a lot more. But basically, to cut that gigantic save, what you do is you superheat oxygen against magnesium, and it creates that super, super hot
6,000 degrees or
yeah,
7,000
I think
degrees.
7 to 8,000 is what the guy said.
It is pretty damn hot, and you can tell those guys are tired after they do that. I mean, all of that's real. James Caan, everybody had to go to boot camp for this. So, like, Michael Mann does not screw around. They all learned how to basically pick safes and get into like I mean, James Caan even talked about how his sister once asked him to break into a safe that she forgot the combination to, and he could do it.
Interesting. They definitely make use of that learning in this movie, because they spend a lot of time showing you that.
And stuff. You see the entire process. This is one of those movies that you could take some of that and like use that as a basis to learn how to do the stuff in this movie.
It's like a YouTube how-to video almost.
Right. It's kind of funny though, because there's only really one safe that gets cracked, and that's at the beginning in the first like credit opening scene. After that, they don't actually crack the safe. They just fucking cut a hole in one.
Right. By the way, if I understood the James Caan interview properly, they brought the safe in and they said, okay, we're going to film you cracking this. And they didn't tell him what to do or what that is real. He actually,
that's awesome.
Because he said that after he cut through and he realized that there was like this little slit inside the hole, that he basically just grabbed a hammer and a chisel and just broke it himself. Huh. Yeah, so that's all real.
you guys ever see the movie The Score with Edward Norton and Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro? No,
I semi-recall that, but I don't.
I mean, I kind of remember the title.
It's an okay movie. It takes place in Montreal. Robert De Niro is kind of like an ex-thief, right? He's sort of semi-retired, and he's living in Montreal. And Edward Norton is kind of like the up-and-coming safe-cracker thief who wants to learn and wants to get into one big score. And then you got Marlon Brando, who kind of plays I forget. I think he's kind of like the fence guy, right?
Is he mostly just propped up on screen by farts?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that sounds about right for him.
It's one of those roles where he's famous for, or infamous, I should say, for having all of his dialogue fed to him.
Oh my God,
earpiece. Yeah,
and he probably cashed a gigantic check.
Yeah, but it's not a great movie. It's not as good as this movie, but it's almost like, hey, let's make Thief, but let's put a lot more safe cracking in it.
Right.
So that's kind of what it is, right? It's like, give the people what they want. It's very popcorn fodder.
Interesting.
All right, so let's go back to 1981 now. 31 years ago, or 41 years ago. This was actually an early year release. I think it was released like in March or something like that, but which is probably why it didn't end up getting any kind of Oscar consideration. It was already long gone by the time, and people had forgotten about it by the time they were voting on that almost a year later. We had talked, we were kind of talking about how a little surprised that there's nothing. This movie just has good reviews. That's it.
He didn't get an Academy Award nomination until Last of the Mohicans, Michael Mann, and then The Insider had a whole bunch.
Yeah.
What did Last of the Mohicans win for? It won something.
It was probably some sort of a design or editing or something.
Didn't Daniel Day-Lewis win?
It was Best Sound. Best Sound. Yep.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
No, he won.
No, he wasn't even nominated.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he won for My Left Foot, and then for There Will Be Blood.
There Will Be Blood. Yeah. But yeah, The Insider was the one that got like 7 nominations and then didn't win anything.
Nope.
It's always fun when that happens. That's a long night. It's a long night for those people. It's like, we'll get one, right? Nope.
You get none.
You get none. Thanks for coming. Here's your
gift bag.
iPad. Yeah.
All right. So this movie opens basically with James Caan doing what James Caan does, which is thieving. and he is
he's thieving around.
He's thieving around. He's thieving around.
Steve.
Anyway, so he's got three. There's three guys that are, or there's two other guys with this 3-man crew. He's the one who busts crack safes. He's got a guy who does like alarm work, who's played by James Belushi. This is his first film. A lot of firsts in this movie. And then there's usually a guy who is on the ground basically listening to the police scanner. So he's typically the only guy, or usually the only guy, who's actually cracking the safe in whatever the mark is. Now, what we find out later is there's really only two things that he will steal, and that is basically uncut diamonds or jewels and cash. So basically things that cannot be ultimately tracked or be problematic to get rid of.
Real quick too, this is an early producer effort from Jerry Bruckheimer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
Yeah. And so he's kind of cracking it. He cracks into the safe, and you see him kind of tossing aside a lot of stuff that he doesn't care for. He doesn't want. He doesn't want rings. He doesn't want necklaces. He just wants these envelopes of diamonds. And he basically is going to take that to a fence who is connected to the Chicago mob. But before we get there, there are some wonderful shots here.
This entire opening sequence is one of my favorites I think I've seen in a while. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
The shot of the rain falling down through the alley as it kind of starts up high and moves down, and the rain is falling down, and you've got the kind of electric blue credits coming up on screen. The guy in the car, like, seriously, that could be ripped from Blade Runner. It looks so cool.
Well,
and then you've got that Tangerine Dream synth score kicking in. Yeah, it's like, oh shit, am I watching Blade Runner?
Yeah, it does.
It's awesome.
It does almost feel like either a sci-fi or a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
There is another really cool shot. He drills into the outside of the safe, and then the camera follows in through the hole to see the mechanism that he has to essentially crack at that point. But yeah,
I don't know much about safe advances in technology over the years, but from my understanding of movies that I've seen about safe cracking, a lot of safes nowadays you can't just drill the lock.
Well, they mentioned that
because they put in. Did they? I must have missed it, because a lot of times they have like glass panes, and if you puncture the glass pane, it will essentially release a pin that jams the lock, and it's then impossible to even get it.
Right. So the reason why they had to cut through the safe at the end is because that was a state-of-the-art safe that had the locking mechanism.
Well, they didn't know where it was.
No two safes of that company have the locking mechanism.
That's a little different. Like, they could have drilled it, he said, but it would take forever to find out where the locking mechanism was.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's like in the interest of time, it didn't make sense to do that. It made more sense to cut through it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So no, these days, I don't know much about that. I mean, like, I know that safes are very heavy. and the one that they steal, and
they don't usually want to make it very easy to lift.
No, and the one that they stole in Fast Five.
I knew you were going to go there.
That one killed people in the streets of Brazil. But anyway,
still one of the greatest action sequences.
Oh my God,
10 to 20 years. It's amazing.
So anyway, James Caan. He runs a bar, and he runs a car lot, and that is his front. And also James Belushi works for him at the car shop. But on his way to the office the next morning, he stops off and sees a guy right there on the edge of Lake Michigan. And that shot where they're looking, that's great because it looks like an infinity pool almost.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that scene because it doesn't really play much later. It's just a really nice shot, and it kind of humanizes James Caan's character a little bit,
which is interesting because I think that's a front too, because he is not a good guy.
Well, no, he's certainly not, but you see a side of him that's a little bit more gentle, I guess. Yeah,
and I think that maybe that guy reminds him a little bit of the Willie Nelson character. Could
be. There's a kindness to him that isn't really defined, but it's there. I mean, there's no doubt to that. But you definitely. I think that's part of it too. Is it subverts your expectations maybe a little bit in that scene, and then you're maybe a little bit more shocked when you find out how kind of shitty he is.
Yeah, we're getting there real soon.
He gets really shitty.
Did you guys think that at any and maybe this is just James Caan, I don't know, but do you think that possibly at any point that he could potentially murder an entire bar's worth of patrons just at a drop of a hat?
He didn't do that? I thought he did.
I mean, he murdered an entire house full of them. So, right.
I mean, you're not comfortable around the guy.
I wouldn't be comfortable around James Caan in general. Yeah. I just wouldn't. There's not a person I would ever want to meet. He just intimidates me. I've heard that he's very intimidating in person and on set as well. It's like, I'll just watch you work, man. I don't want to meet you.
That's kind of my first problem with this movie. Not that I dislike it or anything, but I don't care about anyone in this film. Zero people. And maybe you're not supposed to. I don't know. Yeah. I don't like anybody at all.
Because I was sitting there thinking, because you guys probably know by now that if I can't find somebody to really give a shit for, the movie almost has no chance with me.
Yeah.
However, there are instances in which you become invested in somebody like James Caan in this, or Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, where these are absolute monsters, but there's something interesting that you want to watch them do what they're doing. Like, I think it's more about,
I think it's a couple things. It's there's something fascinating about watching someone do something well, right?
Yeah.
And James Caan does what he does well, and you want to see how he's going to do it, right? There's also that angle of he wants out. He wants to start a life. He's trying to be a better person. You're kind of rooting for that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then the third component is that there's somebody that's worse. Who needs to get what's coming to them.
Robert
right?
Prosky
and he's
terrifying.
the man for the job.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, what keeps it engaging for me. Those three things.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I liked Robert Prosky better than James Caan.
He is
honestly
awesome.
I don't even mean just the acting, because he is great in this movie. Until later, it's like he seems like a nice guy.
Oh yeah. Well, that's exactly what he wants you to think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the whole time I'm watching it, I'm thinking, James, don't fall for this guy.
Stick to your principles, right? Like, do what you said you're going to do.
Exactly. Oof. Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Let's get back on track.
Well, yeah. At one point, one of my notes was that Robert Prosky is the devil. I mean, quite literally in the story, he is.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So he goes and sees this guy. The guy at the diner kind of cracked me up a little bit. Gags, because
Joe Gags.
Yeah,
is his name.
Gags.
What a great name.
Yeah, and he has this expression on his face that is when the waitress comes up to ask James Caan if he wants any breakfast or anything, and he just kind of dumbly stares at the woman, and it's like, is there something wrong with this guy? Did this guy just turn into a statue, like in his worst possible resting face? But then so he's the fence, and he offers to buy what Frank stole, which was about, if I'm remembering correctly, somewhere around $550,000 worth of diamonds.
He wants 185 or something.
And his fee is going to be 185.
Yep.
And he's like, all right, I'm going to send Barry, which is Jim Belushi. I'm going to go and I'm going to send him to collect this. I'll see you later. And he goes up and Tuesday Weld is the I don't know, the cashier or whatever. Yeah, waitress. Yeah. And he's like, because you see him kind of notice her and everything, and you think, oh, he's going to ask her out. Well, he does, but apparently they've been kind of seeing each other or something.
Yeah,
not conveyed really well in this scene. Actually,
no, but
there's a familiarity there. But there's a familiarity. Yeah,
they've at least gone out a couple of times because he just comes up and is like, so are we going out or what?
Yeah,
tonight. And she's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. There is one other important thing here, which is kind of crucial to the story. Gags offers to, I'll say, reinvest. I don't know what the right word is.
Put it on the street.
Put his money into investments. And Caan is like, no, your money goes on the street. My cash stays with me. So he's very...
I like the line a lot, so I wrote it down. He says, my money goes in the bank. You put your money on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does not want to invest his money, for lack of a better term. He will not. Maybe it is the right term. He will not invest his money. He wants.
And this is another principle of his, right?
Yes. Right. Yes. He's got investments, right? He owns a bar and he wants money to retire. Basically, is the way I take that. So anyway, he goes off and he's going to go and take care of some other things. And then he's going to go out on a date. And Barry shows up to collect, and he tries calling Frank. And he's like, he finally gets a hold of Frank at his bar. And he's like, yeah, so I came to collect. And, basically that fat fuck is all over the pavement.
And he's probably got your money in his pocket.
He probably has your money in his pocket. And like, Frank is like, well, what about the merchandise? Do you still have the merchandise and all of that? And he's like, or, whatever.
Gags had the merchandise.
Right. That's right. And he's like, so what's, I think he's asking if the merchandise was still with him too, or something like that, I think. But anyway, and he's like, well, who did this? What's going on? And he's like, I'll be able to kind of poke around in about 20 minutes or so and try to get some answers.
Yep.
Meanwhile, he's also gotten a letter from his friend Okla, who is Willie Nelson, which is interesting because it's like, if I have to say anything, we get two scenes with Willie Nelson, and it's like this is a big thing in James Caan's character's life, and we only get two scenes with this guy.
Yeah,
it's a little. It's almost you can cut that out almost completely.
You could. It's like a. I think what it does is it reinforces his pitch to
Tuesday, whatever
Jesse.
the name is.
Yeah, Tuesday Weld, because his like admiration and love for Okla is like it's part of his collage of things, right? And
Steph was calling it a vision board.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was too.
Yeah, totally. That's what Susan called it.
Yeah,
and it endears him to her that he has this affection for this guy.
Yeah. So and he goes and Okla tells him, it's like, man, you got to get me out of here. And James Caan's like, well, what do you mean? You're going to be out in 10 months anyway. He's like, I've got some sort of a heart condition, some sort of angina. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, I ain't going to make it 10 months. You got to get me out of here soon. He's like, all right, well, now let me see what I can do. There is this kind of weirdness where it seems like James Caan does not want to see him. Like, did you guys pick up on that too? Where it's like he only went to see him because he got a letter, even though he tells him I was going to come anyway. I get kind of the feeling that Oakland,
he hadn't seen him in a while,
right?
Yeah,
and it kind of feels almost like Oakland is more. The person isn't as important as the idea of what he is.
That could be very well, yeah.
Because when we talk about that vision board later, he's just looking for somebody to fill one of those images in the collage. It doesn't have to be Tuesday Weld. It can be the next woman.
Yeah.
Which also explains the ending a little bit too.
Yep.
And also very likely what happened to his wife, his first wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get the impression that the only person he really cares about now is Barry. And not even himself, right? He doesn't care much about himself, even.
Well, the whole thing about his appreciation for himself is it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because in a way he does everything for himself and he doesn't consider a lot of other people around him. However, he also realizes that he's invincible if he gives that part, if he gives no fucks for himself. He's invincible.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a weird thing. He's a weird guy.
These are themes that are explored a little bit deeper in Heat with the Robert De Niro character. Like, very much so. It's kind of wild to me how similar those two characters are. You could tell that Michael Mann has some kind of curiosity about that type of person, that this criminal expert who can't really live the way most of us live and plan a life, and it has this selfish side to them, but they want this illusion of a normal life, right?
Yeah, it's some of that, and Michael Mann does an interview on that disc too. It's like 25 minutes, but it's pretty interesting because the reason why he mostly focuses on crime dramas and thrillers like that is because he grew up kind of in inner Chicago, where these people were like his neighbors. They had come out of prison. There were interesting people who, so yeah, it's like there, and also some of the people that he lived around also, I mean, like they were kind of idolized by that because it was a way out of the, of the shittier parts of the city. So he's kind of, he kind of knows these types of people, and that's, and because it really
makes sense, because if he had James Caan learning from actual thieves, it's like, how the hell do you know actual thieves?
Right. And then on top of that, the movie that he did for TV just before this was filmed in Folsom County Prison.
Yeah.
Which was so he had learned from these people. It's like a lot of people think that criminals just go to jail and wait to die, and it's like, no, it's the other way around. The warden and the guards are the ones wasting away. The prisoners are vibrant, and they build a society in there, and it's interesting, and none of them want to die in there, but at the same time there's it's a reversal of what people think the jail system is, really.
So there's two things we do learn from that scene where he goes to meet Okla. One is that he wants out because he has the angina, which you mentioned. Two, Okla gives him the advice of letting Jesse know who he is. He's like, don't lie to anyone. And even people you don't know, there's no point in lying to. So just be honest, basically. So that obviously is important to an upcoming scene here in a minute.
Yeah, so we
learned that his ex-wife he never told, and that was kind of the reason that their relationship fell apart.
Right. So then he finds out who probably took his $185,000. And here is when the movie takes a turn, because when he goes to this company, and he finds this guy who this is just another front. This is a guy who's connected to the mob or somebody bigger, and he's like, so I want my money, and he leaves no uncertain terms. You give me the money in 3 hours, I think is what he says, and otherwise I'm gonna blow your fucking brains out, basically.
Right.
And he kind of muscles that a little bit. By the way, one of that guy's goons in there is the first.
Dennis Farina.
Oh yeah, it's his first movie
Dennis
too.
Farina. I was going to mention it earlier. The bartender is William Peterson.
Not that bartender. It's
not that bartender.
No, not the one that works for James Caan. It's the one that comes up later.
Oh shit! Yeah, the one in the where he meets at the bar or his date. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
I think the Green Mill guy is in Eyes of Fire, but I think it's
weird.
Jimmy was that guy who worked for James Caan.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's right.
So he gets a call to go and meet, and it's a couple of goons, and it's Robert Prosky. And meanwhile, in another building, some cops are watching. And you think, oh, this is just going to be added pressure, but not the type of pressure you think.
Nope.
Because these cops are dirty as fuck.
Yes, they are.
And that one, and the head cop was actually on parole, and another one of the cops was played by a guy who was on the FBI list until like the late aughts or something. Wow. Yeah.
And the other thing, Dennis Farina, he started as a cop as well.
Yeah,
he was a real life cop, and who I think Michael Mann discovered him and put him in a TV movie or something. Yeah.
Yep. That's another guy I wouldn't want to like. I feel like if Dennis Farina was like, hey, why don't you make me some eggs? I don't want to tell him I don't have eggs. You know what I mean?
I'll lay him a couple.
How about some butt eggs? Speaking of, we should probably put like Get Shorty or something on here at some point. Anyway, I think there's a lot of Elmore Leonard stuff we can do. But anyway, so so he goes and the one guy that he basically muscled earlier in the day to set up this meeting to get his money back, is like, we should just kill him. Let's just kill him. He's kind of like the little chihuahua hopping around the big.
Hey, boss,
bulldog.
where are we going, boss?
Yeah, what are we doing? We should just whack him. Just whack him. Anyway, and Robert Prosky's like, shut the fuck up. You know, it's like, I'm handling this my way. And he gets the money, and Prosky's like, are you going to thank me for that? And, you know, and it's like, oh, this is a guy who's asking, he's now trying to muscle James Caan a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's like, and this is a bad idea, old man. But he says they do kind of make nice. And Prosky's like, hey, why don't you work for me? You know, basically, it's like, I can set you up with big scores, way bigger than what this shit was. And he's like, you know, why should I work for you? I'm self-employed. I work for myself. I do my own cuts. And he's like, nah, it's, you know.
You also find out that the fence has been selling the diamonds to Leo. So Leo has been aware of him for a long time.
Well, and the fence also said, hey, my guy wants to meet you. Do you want to meet him? And he's like, no, I don't want to fucking meet him.
Right. Yeah. But now they're meeting because Leo had to essentially like press to force this meeting, because Leo ultimately wants James Caan to work for him. I mean, this is a great scene because it's just this pitch and negotiation. And James Caan like is pushing back as much as he can, but he's still listening.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Chuck?
I can't remember. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Robert Prosky is also shot from or is lit from below, so it makes him look even more intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Caan is lit straight on, where again, that's kind of the idea of, hey, we should be on the side of Frank, even though Frank is a crazy rage monster.
Yeah, and we got Belushi standing on top of the billboard that says "Here's to fun" with a gun.
Yep, he's going to snipe the guys if he has to.
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
And then you mentioned the cops. There's one good line. The one cop is like, "Hey, there's 2 inches of money there."
Yeah,
which is pretty. Yeah, I like that line.
Well, and so they're looking for guys now to basically they want to grease their palms now too, as we find out later. This was, they are kind of looking at Leo, but they find James Caan as being somebody that they can kind of hassle a little bit to grease.
And we find out they have no idea who he is. So
they have
James
no idea.
Caan, James Caan is in a really good position before he meets Leo because he has nobody on him whatsoever.
Exactly.
He's in the clear basically. He can just keep stealing shit as long as he doesn't get caught. But meeting Leo puts him on the radar immediately.
It's just like this show. There's no heat on it yet.
Yeah. We're gonna get that heat,
but it also is realistic in the sense that he could still say no, but you can't really say no to this guy, right? He's not someone you can say no to,
right?
And in being in his line of work, somebody's got to be on the other side of the transaction to buy stolen goods, right? And those people aren't good people, and you're going to eventually find yourself on the radar of either the cops or the mob.
The big fish, situation. Right?
He's in a little bit.
That's what's happened.
He's in a little bit of a pickle too because he's lost his fence. He now realized the guy that's buying from him totally cut him out, saying, "No, we don't buy from this dude anymore."
Yep.
So he can't do anything with his wares. And I think he's it's not explained. They don't explain a lot in this movie at all of what's going on ever. But I think James Caan kind of realizes that, this is my position now. I kind of have to do this, even though I don't want to.
Right. So he's kind of already hyped up a little bit. He goes to the bar to find Tuesday Weld. He's 2 hours late.
What's the big fucking deal? I'm 2 hours late. This is where he turns into a real piece of shit.
Yeah, because he just basically he starts manhandling her. That's when William Peterson's beard comes up, and it's like, I've got a gross beard, everybody. And he tries to. He does not have a chin for a beard, man. He does not. That thing is gross. Anyway, so he and I thought that even during the first Young Guns movie, it's like that's a gross beard, man. Anyway, but
poor William Peterson.
No, poor nothing. He's like Mr. TV man now. It's like he's fine.
I love William Peterson.
He can take some slings from me.
For some reason, there's something I like about him, always. So even if his beard is gross, I love William Peterson.
Did you ever watch To Live and Die in L.A.? That's one we covered. Jeff and I covered a while back. Have you ever watched that one, Chuck?
I've seen it, but I don't recall it very well. Yeah,
that's a good flick.
Yep.
So he and then he drags her out of the bar, and this really happened. A guy, one of the extras, was like this. He's like this big 250-pound gorilla. He called him in the interview that's on the disc. Is comes up to him, and he's all in at this point, and he fucking pushes the guy real hard. It looks like he punches him, but he said he didn't punch him. He just pushed him across the chest. And I guess the guy went to Michael Mann. It's like, man, he hurt me. What's going on? You got to calm him down. And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, what do you mean I hurt him? It's like, he's 250 pounds. He could have crushed me.
That's hilarious.
I'm also thinking that the cars coming the other direction didn't expect for him to whip out into traffic the way he did.
That looked pretty real.
That looked real.
Yeah. This scene upcoming is really strange. It confused me because they start talking about shit that I didn't know he knew and I didn't know she knew. And it's like a whirlwind of exposition dump. And I'm like, I can't even keep up with what they're talking about here at all.
Are you talking about in the diner?
Yeah, this whole next
This
segment
is one of the best scenes in the movie, in my opinion. This is the De Niro Pacino scene in Heat. this is where, yes, you understand who both of these people are and what their motivations are about, right? It's shot, oh God, I love it. I love it.
Well,
Is that like it's like shot over looks like it's shot over the Dan Ryan.
Yeah,
right?
it might
Is
be
there like some sort of overhang diner, almost
yeah,
like
or like a revolving diner almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, although before they get there in the car, he's like, yeah, so it's like let's move along with this big romance. To which she responds, "What?" It's like after she just dragged her out.
Get on with this big romance. So good, man.
Yeah. It should be said that even though he does a few times, James Caan tried to consciously never say contractions. He said that he wanted Frank to be set up as a guy who is very clear with what he says, and he thought the first thing to do was to not use contractions, because when you don't use contractions, it becomes very forceful, very like there is no question about what he's wanting or what he's saying.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I like that.
Because it was written with contractions all over the place. He's like, I took them all out.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
But anyway,
I cannot say those contractions.
Right, exactly. He does use a few, and I think some of them, like one of the big ones is when they get to the diner, he's I think this is probably real. The cream had curdled on the counter or on the table. I think that was real, because you don't write shit like that. Yeah, but like he fucking almost like I expect him to like throw it at the fucking waitress.
It might have been ad-libbed, but I don't know if it was really, like it might not have even been anything in there.
It's probably empty.
Possibly. Although no, I don't think it would be empty. That was something else that Michael Mann said, was that he tries to get real props exactly as they would be in real life, because the actor would know these types of things.
Because that was probably a long day of shooting.
Yeah. probably and but it was so long. That was the other thing. James Caan was like, man, this guy wakes us up at 5:30 in the morning to start the day. It's like, who does that?
It's funny.
Yeah. So basically they worked like 18-hour days probably on this movie, because Michael Mann is like
maniac.
Maniac. Yeah, a maniac. Yeah.
There's one thing you need to know in this scene, though. He's just asking.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
This
scene, I should also mention, is kind of the critical darling scene as well. It's what this movie is mostly known for.
And James Caan he said this is one of his top 2 or 3 most proud scenes of over 100 movies that he's done. Apparently this was for a long time taught in Lee Strasberg's acting class too.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So anyway, Jason, if you want to talk about the whole thing.
Well, he talks a lot about basically his prison experience, right? He was in for stealing $40, and that was surprising to Jesse. And he's like, well, yeah, it started out as a short stint, but things escalate. He tells a story about how he was kind of next in line to be gangbanged by this group of pieces of shit, and he got kind of tipped early, and he attacked the main guy with a lead pipe or something from the plumbing department.
He's very specific.
Yeah, and then he gets jumped by the rest of the gang, and they beat him up pretty bad. He said he spent 6 months in the infirmary, but the other guy got it way worse. He was all messed up. And but then from then he was like, he got out of the infirmary, and he expected to not to die. Like it was going to be the end for him. But
the moment he stepped a foot into the yard, he was a dead man, he thought.
Right. but he had realized that he had changed his mentality to not give a shit about himself, basically, like not care whether he lived or died, and that presence of mind, and if honestly probably the fact that he beat the crap out of a guy with a lead pipe, he'd earned a modicum of respect and was feared a little bit, and they just left him alone. But he obviously had a lot of time added to his sentence, so he was in for 11 years. But he talks a lot about that idea of having to separate yourself from giving a shit, really. Again, this is echoed by De Niro's character in Heat quite a bit. De Niro talks about living your life in a way that you don't have anything you can't leave behind in 30 seconds flat, right? And that's that. James Caan doesn't say that to Jesse, because that's not part of the pitch for him to be part of his perfect world. But he lives that way, right? And when you see him do that later, but that's when he shows her his vision board of all the things that he wants in his life, and he reflects on, and he talks about Okla and what Okla means to him. Talks a little bit about the skulls and that representing death and not fearing death, I think is the gist there. But really kind of he wins her over. He's like, I want to have a family with you. I want children. I want to leave this life behind and be with you. And she says, well, I can't have children, and I don't know if I want them. He's like, well, we can adopt, of course you want children, blah, 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 blah. And he kind of wins her over. It doesn't feel like she's totally in, right? But she talks about her last relationship as well and how that didn't go well. And I don't remember exactly the details around that, but
she was a hooker, and she was rescued basically by a drug dealer who was not good to her, and he ended up dying. Basic gist.
Yeah, thanks.
And she was in Bogota or something like that. She was like in Colombia.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
So you can kind of tell that she's maybe looking for some stability in her life too, and that this is maybe a chance for that, albeit it's a risk, and it doesn't turn out so well.
No, but she's also like what's kind of interesting is that because like he's like, here's the house that we'll have, here's this, and then shortly after that, he buys her a house.
Yeah. And she's excited about it.
Yeah, and it's like at this point you begin to realize that it's like, in one regard, there is some sort of an attempt at a redemption for this guy.
Absolutely.
He wants out of this life. The problem
that's why you kind of root for him, right? He's probably on his like 8th chance,
right?
But you still want him to maybe be a better person. You want to see if he can achieve it.
The problem is that he goes about it in a bad way, because basically what he ultimately is doing throughout the course of the second act really is he's buying this life.
Yeah.
He essentially buys his pitch and his forwardness and his opening up to Jesse, basically buys her. Yeah. Then, which is doubled down by buying the perfect house for them.
Well, the very first thing he does after that conversation in the diner with Jesse is he calls Leo. He says, I'm in. They have to be big scores and fast, 1 to 2 jobs tops, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, he's going to sacrifice all of his principles for this other thing, and playing essentially, he's gambling,
right?
And he's, I mean, as an audience person watching this movie, you're like, this is the wrong way of going about this,
right? And then later they try to adopt a kid, but of course finding out that he's a convict.
God, that scene is funny.
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't say some of the ethnic slurs that he says, but the line he says fucking kills me.
Right. Oh my God. It's like he literally will take anybody off their hands.
Yep.
Is the gist of it.
Yep.
You got any
man.
undesirables? Give them to me. It's like, that's fine.
Like she says we have more applicants than children. It's like, well, then why do you have so many children here still?
Well, and then the cop comes up to basically escort him out. It's like, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus, don't mess with Sonny Corleone.
But this is
there's also the scene in the courtroom where the lawyer is arguing to have Okla released early because he's sick. And that's an interesting scene. I don't know who that actor is who played the lawyer, but he's
probably a criminal.
He's got a fascinating face, and
they're signaling to each other.
Yeah,
they're negotiating. Yeah.
They're negotiating. But it's that style of negotiation where you mimic the person who you want something from, and that's what the lawyer's doing. He's doing all the facial gestures. He's like putting his hands under his chin, doing exactly what the judge is doing.
Well, they're telling each other how much money.
Yeah.
How much
is that
money
what
he
it was?
wants.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Because they both end up like
I
this.
want 10,000, and he's like, I'll give you 8.
I didn't get that at all.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
and they land on 6.
Yes.
And so afterwards, that's when he said,
holy shit, I did not get that. That's
afterward,
so cool.
the lawyer is like, yeah, so see, I we got it for 6, and James Caan's like, 6? I thought it was going to be 10. Here, keep the change, basically.
I like the guy in the courtroom though who's talking to James Caan. It's like, what are they doing if they're picking their noses?
But yeah, they're resting
so
the exact fingers.
I feel like a moron. Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's also we have to discuss too that they were on the roof of the building looking where the next score was,
which is in Los Angeles. They have to go. This movie feels like it takes place over the course of a couple of days. I think it takes place over the course of months.
Yeah,
at least, because it takes the guy like a while to build the thing that'll break torch. Into the safe anyway.
And they've also got to figure out the alarm code. Yep.
So they're flying back and forth from Chicago to Los Angeles constantly at this point.
Yeah, the guy that's sitting behind him in the court is the guy that got him the California licenses. So they had,
so they could cover, And
he's like, I want a leather coat or a fur coat. Or
my wife wants a fur coat.
Yeah. It's like, I'm a car dealer. He's like, whatever.
Yeah, because see, this is the beginning where people are all coming to them with hands out. And they're not going to Leo with hands out. They're all coming to James Caan. And these are signs that because like James Caan's like, he meets up with Robert Prosky at one point. And he's like, this fucking guy wants a fur coat when I agreed to give him $100 or whatever it was, and he's talking about like, there are these, these cops are now pulling me over saying that they want something from me. And these should be all signs that the walls are closing in on you, Frank. And it's like everybody wants something from him. They never go to the guy who's paying everybody.
Right.
What does that tell you? That tells you that they don't want to fucking deal with the big fish. They want to essentially catch and eat these small fish.
They want to extort James Caan, basically.
Exactly. It's like, well, this guy, it's like, because some of them, are either being told to extort him or that they feel protected, that they can kind of basically latch onto the new guy as opposed to, and it's like, what's Robert Prosky going to do? Kill the cops? And especially when there's 6 cops who show up wanting handouts.
No, this is all part of the game. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's
a game that James Caan never had to play before because he was self-employed.
And he even says, before I got hooked up with you, I didn't have any of this heat on me. And now, I'm dealing with all this. And Prosky's trying to tell him, Leo's trying to tell him, now I'll take care of it. You won't ever spend a day in jail, night in jail. I'll always be taken care of. He's telling him all the right things, but it's still at the end of the day, it's Frank who's dealing with all this bullshit. Yep.
And then we find out that Prosky even knows that he tried to adopt a kid.
Yep.
and he basically knows everything about him now.
This is where he gets Frank good.
Yeah,
He tells him he can get him when he can get him a kid, and Frank is over the moon about it because he knows that Jesse will be excited, and it's part of his vision board. It's a piece that's fallen into place for him. But it's like, come on, man! Now you've given Leo everything. All the leverage he needs on you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And because I do like the Prosky even says it's like, yeah, you're not adopting the mother. Who cares where it came from? Yeah. You know, it's like there are people who are looking to get rid of the kids all the time.
Yep.
So he goes and like he finds out about this, like, oh great, and he gets a call because they're at his bar, and he gets the call and he takes off running and finds out that pretty much the moment that Willie Nelson was released from prison, he has like a cardiac arrest on the steps of the courthouse where he's getting all the paperwork filed.
Yep.
And he goes and meets up with Tuesday Weld at the and the lawyer at the hospital, finds out what happened. They kind of have a quick little scene where he introduces Jesse to Okla, and Okla tells him something, and then pretty much dies right there.
Yeah, he does.
And this is the shattering of the world at this point, because everything was perfect.
Mm-hmm. It was all falling into place. He's getting everything he needed.
And now pieces are starting to flick off of the vision board here.
But he says goodbye to Okla and then picks up his kid on like the same night.
Yeah, and then they go to the Chinese restaurant.
Mention of that at the Chinese restaurant. It's like it's sort of a symmetry to that, right?
Right. And the Chinese waiter, I was like, oh God, don't ask questions, waiter, man. He's like, what name? What's the name? It's like, get the fuck out of there, dude. James Caan's gonna fucking destroy you if you keep bothering him.
Man, you know how you like dummies falling off of tall buildings? I like bundles that are supposed to be babies that are just blankets.
Oh,
I love it. I love that in movies. And there was a classic one in this. It's like, yeah, they just adopted an Afghan. Sweet.
Yeah. It's like a bag of potatoes or something in there. Yeah.
It's pretty funny too, because she asks the waiter to warm up a bottle of milk, and he comes back with like a plate of fortune cookies.
Yeah, but at one point, he does yell at the guy in the back for it though.
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering what he did.
Yeah, because then at that point they was like, oh, what's his name? And it's like, get the fuck out of there, dude. And it's like, no name yet. We just got him, basically. And then they decide they're going to name him David after Okla,
because that's Okla's real name. Yep.
And then James Caan stands up. It's like, hey, we named him. It's like, wow, this is the happiest James Caan's ever been in life. His name is David, and he's like, oh, David, strong name. And then he yells at the guy in the back something, which I assume is get that fucking milk. You know, it's
and
like
he pounds James on the counter.
Yeah, James Caan's out
this
here.
This guy's gonna kill us all.
I didn't come into work today to die.
Yeah. While this is going on, too, we have, what's his name again? Barry is trying to figure out the fifth alarm.
That's right. That's an important conversation when they're casing out the joint, is that there's 5 alarms. 4 of them go out through the phone lines, but there's a 5th alarm that they know it exists, but they don't know how it works.
Yeah.
They just don't know. They don't know what triggers it, anything about it. But they know it's there. So that's what Barry's got to figure out. Yeah.
Yes, and he does figure out that it's a radio alarm. They have to pass a code via radio. That's why they can't find it on the phone line.
Yep.
So Barry breaks into somewhere. I don't know where. He's in a stairwell, and he's listening over the radio, and he finds out that the code is Mexico.
Yeah.
And at the same time, James Caan gets pinched by the cops finally.
Yep.
For a busted taillight, and he gets his ass beat by the cops, and he's like, I'm not paying you shit.
Why don't you do some work for yourself and do your own scores?
Yeah, he's like, did it ever occur to you that you could work yourselves?
Yeah.
Did it ever occur to you to work for a living?
Yeah. They beat James Caan up so bad that they used the fucking yellow pages on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steph's like, oh, not the phone book.
they threw the book at him. Yep.
Yeah.
They did. Pretty funny.
Yeah. So, but yeah, he gets beat up pretty good. He also finds out that the home phone is bugged.
Yep.
To which his response to that is, "Fuck this house."
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, no,
fuck
I'm
this
okay.
house.
I'll
Yeah.
survive.
He's the kind of guy who squashes spiders with a flamethrower.
Yes.
It's the way to do it. It's the way to do it.
With a magnesium hot rod or whatever it's called. But he's also, when they release him, I hope I'm not skipping anything important. When they release him from being beat up, they bug his car. They put something on his car to follow him.
Yeah,
And
he had a tracker earlier. He knew he had a tracker because
he had two. He's like, I was supposed to find this
Leo
one
earlier. Yeah.
He's like, I was supposed to find this one, but not the one under the wheel well and whatever.
Yeah.
The combination of the score and the beeping of that fucking thing not only was driving me nuts, but also my cats went fucking ape shit.
Mine did too. They
started running around, and one of my cats tipped over, tipped over a trash can.
Jeez. Yeah. Ransom like randomly barked throughout this movie at like noises that happened too. Just pretty funny.
Yeah. So but yeah, so basically it's time to do that. Well, we should say that the whole magnesium rod thing, there's a guy that works at a machine shop that James Caan goes to, that Oakland knew. He was an older guy, and he is by the way, do you guys know that Willie Nelson is like 500 years old?
Yes.
I mean, he's old 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, but this old guy knows what it takes to cut through certain types and certain widths of metal. What happened, because a lot of safes are built with it's like different alloys of steel, and then usually there's a stop that's made out of copper that you can't drill through. That was something else I learned from James Caan. I'm telling you, James Caan taught me how to fucking bust open safes. It's great.
Yeah, real quick, Willie Nelson would have been about 50.
He looks 72 in this movie.
He would have been about 48 in this movie. He is 88 years old now. He's an old man.
Interesting.
The medicinal uses of pot keeps him alive.
Yep.
He's never going to die, probably.
Jeff, we're going to find out tomorrow.
Oh, shit.
I know. Probably before this gets published, he's going to croak on us.
Yeah.
Shit. Well, I better get on the road again. I'm just going to slowly back out of here. Anyway, so, but anyway, so yeah, and he's like, give me some time. I got to figure this out, because they get the schematics of what type of safe that they need to break into. And he's like, well, this is going to be hard, but I'll figure something out. And he's already shown James Caan, or he shows James Caan, here's the magnesium rod. You got to wear a welder's mask, and it's going to be sparks and shit and fire everywhere. It's going to be like walking into the fucking sun, but you're going to be able to get through it. And you're going to be able to use this to slice of, and because he's like, I can't find the locking mechanism. I just want to build a new door and walk right in.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, this will do it. So, so basically at this point, they've got the code, they've got everything. They know they are ready to do the job. So they go.
One other thing.
Yeah.
One other thing. When he does get released from getting beat up by the cops, he takes the tracker and he puts it on a bus to Des Moines.
Yep.
Yes.
So the cops are obviously following a bus, and they think they're following James Caan. So they're gone. The cops are dealt with because they're idiots.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, it would have been funny if instead of Des Moines, it was the Plain, which is just the part of northern Chicago. He never got rid of them. It's like, fuck, I thought that said Des Moines.
Man uses almost this exact beat in Heat also, because after the scene with De Niro and Pacino in the diner, De Niro is going to his next job. Basically, they're going to hit the bank the next day, and he loses the cops. He like ditches his car, and he loses all of his tails. And Pacino's like, he gets to the police station, and he's like, he's told we lost him. It's like, what do you mean you lost him? I just had coffee with him 30 minutes ago, right? So it's like the meeting with the cops and then instantly ditched, right? And then the job.
Yeah,
it's the same kind of beat pattern.
Yeah. So they so basically they get up to the top of it was the Bank of California or something like that, or the California Bank or whatever, and they have to first cut into the elevator shaft where there will be a pipe of wires in there, and James Belushi has to basically find the wires that are live, which I think is for the phone system, if I understand correctly.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. So it takes some time because there's like 3,000 wires in this pipe, and they're able to cut that off, and then they go in just right up to the front door, basically, to get into the bank, where they drill into the lock and pull it out, and of course that sets off the final alarm. And they go up to the little CB radio, and it's like, Mexico? And everything shuts off. And it's like, all right, so here we go. Now it's time for the inanimate carbon rod to do its thing. And they light that son of a bitch up, and the whole thing is like it's like standing in the middle of the largest fucking sparkler in the world. And it's just, and you gotta have a fire extinguisher there to put out all of the fire that's falling from this. Just the whole thing, and it was all real, and that's amazing.
Cool. That is really cool.
It's very cool scene. And I even was thinking, like, they're actually melting metal here. That's really neat. And I didn't realize that it was actually real, so that's cool.
Oh, when James Caan, like when he finally gets into the safe, or when they finally get into this, he just sits down and has a smoke, and he looks fucking worn out, and I'm sure he was.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a hard, probably 6 hours it took probably to do that.
As hard as it would be to do that, it would be equally hard to film it. Like all of that equipment being near all of that heat, I think would be really, really challenging. I was like, man, that's the sound. Like, oh man, that just seems like a nightmare.
Yeah. They figured it out somehow.
But they get the diamonds. They get all of the diamonds, and then they go for a happy montage in San Diego.
Yes.
Yeah, where you get to see all of James Caan's hairy chest and back in all of its glory to the pulsating synths of Tangerine Dream.
You know, guys, someday I too could be a movie star. That's what that scene told me. I just don't have the curlies like he does. But
you are as menacing as James Caan, though.
I know. I saw that and I was like, Dad? It's like, is there something I don't know about my family history? Anyway.
Were you like, Caan?
Sorry.
Oh, boy. Anyway. Yeah, this is kind of like, you think this is the end of the movie.
Right.
But no.
Maybe you think it, but it's not.
Yeah. And the reality has to set in.
This is his last moment of peace.
Yep. So he comes back to Chicago. It's like, all right, I'm going to go collect. He walks in to Leo's place, and he's like, hey, you did good work. Here you go, laddie. And gives him an envelope, and he starts going through, and it's like, you're light. It's like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it should have been
880,000,
I think, and then he only got 70. He said he put the rest in investments.
He's like, "Oh, fuck that!"
And what we know from earlier is that Frank wants his money. He doesn't put his money on the street.
Nope.
You put your money on the street, Chuck.
I put my money in the bank.
In the bank, and put it in the bank.
So, and then Leo says, "Where's the gratitude here?" And James Caan says, "Where's gratitude? Where is my end?" Such a good delivery, such a good line.
Well, and then
my end is still in your pocket.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Well, you go out in 3 weeks to another job. It's already set up in like Florida, someplace."
Yeah, somewhere in Florida.
And he's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? This is it. This was because he had decided that this was going to be the last job because it was going to be so big. He didn't have to do another one,
right?"
And he's like, "No, fuck off. This is it. I'm done.
I want my money in 24 hours, or you will wear your ass for a hat."
Yes.
Now I'm just picturing somebody taking somebody's butt and just cutting it off and
James Caan will figure it out. Yeah,
Jeff's favorite buddy is like, "See, I told you we should have killed him."
Yeah,
told you.
But what did they? Who do they actually kill?
Well, they go and they rough up they rough up James Belushi.
Yeah, they don't just rough him up.
Well, they roughen him up at first, and then they blast, and then they blow him away.
Yep.
Yeah, they use him as bait basically, and then they kill him. And then you get the really cool. I really like this shot of Prosky, shot like the camera's on the ground.
Oh yeah,
and he's looking down on him and saying like, "Hey, you fucked up. Kid, look what happened to your friend. Mm-hmm. You worked for me. I loaned you the baby." I don't know what he said. He says a lot of stuff. He's like, "The baby's not yours. I loaned it
mine.
To you.
I bought him.
My baby.
Yep.
Yeah.
I own your house. I own this. I own you.
I own you. Yeah.
You're gonna fucking work for me, and that's what's gonna happen." And James Caan is like,
"I run you. There is no discussion."
Yeah, it's awesome. Very menacing.
Yes.
You got responsibilities.
Yes.
It's
yeah, and I think the last thing he says is, "Get back to work, Frank."
Yeah.
Something like that.
And he is not fucking around anymore. So Frank decides to blow up his life. Literally.
Yeah.
He goes home, he pulls Tuesday Weld out of bed and it's like, "Get the kid up and get out of here. Get the fuck out. It's not
Here's $400,000. Joseph's going to take you somewhere, pay him $20,000 a month." And I'm like, "Who the fuck is Joseph?" I was really confused, but out Joseph was the cop scanner guy, the guy who scanned the radio for me.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
He was a driver.
And he's like, sometimes things don't work out. This is one of them. Get out. And he just boots her. He's like fucking done with her, and then blows up their house. And then he goes and lights most of the cars at his dealership on fire. By the way, that was one thing I wanted to say. I really do like how he shot, like it seems like this movie uses a lot of like almost natural light. Like it seems like the car lot in this final scenes are just lit by the strings of lights over them and the reflection off of the metal and everything. It looks so damn cool. This movie doesn't look like movies don't look like this anymore. And that's sad. It makes me sad.
Yeah, I like this aesthetic. It's part of why I really like watching movies from the 70s and the early 80s, because they're just cool looking.
Yeah. There's something grimy, but also something very pristine looking to this movie at times. Like there's a dichotomy to it.
Part of it too is people don't shoot on film anymore. I mean, very few people are shooting on film anymore. I mean, it's a totally different aesthetic. Yep.
Yeah. That's why, Jason, you mentioned Refn's Drive. Like that has this look, and that's
for sure
kind of why I love that movie.
We talked a lot about kind of like the neon noir movie when we did the Drive episode, and yeah, this is an early neon noir film for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually they take place on the West Coast in LA or something, but this is kind of like the Chicago version, and a lot of it I think has to do with the score. Having the synth score instead of a more traditional orchestra or even a jazz score, which is what he originally considered because of the jazz scene in Chicago. He wanted to make it more regional, but Mann was afraid that you would make the experience of the movie too too subjective to James Caan's character by going in that route. So by making it sort of this colder, more synthesized score, he kind of opened up the movie a little bit so that you're more kind of getting a window into his life rather than being so walled off from it, I guess.
Well, I think it heightens two things. I think one, it heightens the pressure of his life, but also it heightens the scenes in which you're seeing him do his job.
Yeah.
Because there are, like there's a specific sound of the job. There's a specific sound to personal moments or their lack thereof of music. There are very specific touches that the Tangerine Dream brings into this.
And a specific sound of revenge.
Yes. Although that was inspired by Comfortably Numb.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a story behind that, but let's finish up the movie and we can talk about that. At the end.
So so basically he blows up the house. He blows up his bar. He sets fire to his car lot, and at this point, he basically takes his vision board and crumples it up and tosses it away. It's fucking over. It's time to reinvent himself.
Yep.
But to do that, he has to kill his old life. So he decides to go right back to Leo's. My favorite henchman wants to get a glass of milk.
It's hilarious.
It's, hey, you want a glass of milk? And Leo's like, no, I'm not going to.
No, I'm an adult.
Yeah, I'm not going to shit my brains out for the rest of the night. Thanks. Anyway, he goes in and he's like poking around in the refrigerator, and I'm like, that refrigerator door is going to be used. It's going to be fucking used. And sure enough, Caan uses it to like basically bash him, and then kind of beats him up a little bit and knocks him out.
I love when he looks into the room where the lady's watching TV, and she's just kind of like, my name's Paul and the shit's between y'all, and he just leaves it.
Yeah, it seems like she's either that kind of classic, like that lady's a little not there, or it's one of those like, well, this was going to come back to roost at some point.
Yeah, she's just like, I'm not involved. I'm just going to go back to watching TV. That's right. I knew this was going to happen eventually, like you said.
Yeah, and so, but then he looks into the room that Leo was just in. He's not sitting there anymore. It's like, uh-oh. But, Leo's kind of waiting for him. He's kind of hiding behind a hutch. And James Caan gets a couple of shots in. And then he gets one big shot in and kills Leo.
My note is kills Prosky in the boobs.
He gets him in the moobs.
Yeah.
And then the little Chihuahua guy starts taking off. He's running away, and James Caan chases him outside. But then some of the other goons, including Dennis Farina, come up, and he starts just blasting everybody. But Dennis Farina appears to shoot James Caan, but he basically finishes everybody off, and it's revealed that he came prepared by wearing a bulletproof flak jacket or something under his shirt.
Which is kind of surprising because the way he blew up the mill, he torched his lot and all that stuff. This looked like a suicide mission. I felt like he wanted to die on it. Yep. And him wearing a vest kind of surprised me. I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, he doesn't, like, I think it was one of those things going back to, like, not giving a shit. It's like, I'm not going to give a shit if they shoot me in the head. But if they try to shoot me anyplace else, I'm gonna finish the job, basically.
Right. I would be curious to know if it was a reshoot.
Well, there was supposed to be a different ending.
Mm-hmm.
The original ending was that there was at least some indication, if not a flat out like seeing it, that Jesse finds Frank later and they get back together. Yeah. Michael Mann's like, that's not. I realized later that's not the story I wanted to tell. That was a cop out. So he's going to finish this, and he's going to walk off into the night, and he's going to pop up someplace else someday with a completely different life.
Yeah.
But again, it's all mirroring the exact same thing, the story that he told in the diner.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But he's going to have to convince another diner waitress to be part of his next vision board.
Yeah.
Wherever that is. I mean, he probably shows up in, like, I don't know, Dallas or something. Who knows? But that's, So it kind of ends on that with, everybody who got it. But Frank has to start over.
Yep.
If Frank is even really actually his name. We don't even know if that's actually his name. We don't know much more than James Caan's playing a guy named Frank.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a bleak ending. Because I mean,
it's what he deserves. It's kind of what he deserves.
It is kind of like the fake ending 30 minutes before that. That wasn't right. That it was too good. And the other thing is that it would at that point in time glorify the crime.
Yeah, and it was filmed kind of dreamlike too.
Yes.
It's interesting because at first I thought he was just imagining the next thing when he was smoking his cigarette, like, this is what my life is going to be like.
That's exactly what I thought too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, wow, that actually happened. But obviously it's, this is the last happy moment of this man's life.
Because the truth is that, and I'm sure that there could be some people who could look at this and it's like, oh, it's glorifying the crime or whatever. It's like, but it's not really, because it's like, if you're good at what you do, you're only staying a couple of steps ahead of the reality of being caught. Yes, there may be some bad, dirty cops who are going to let you off if you grease their palms a little bit. Eventually, you're going to run into a fucking Elliot Ness who's not going to be bought off.
He's one step ahead of the devil.
Exactly. Yep. And eventually it will catch up with you.
Yep.
And, it's like, you can think that you're going to have everything that you want, but it's not real. Again, he bought all that stuff that he wanted in life.
And again, too, the him blowing up his car dealership, blowing up the bar, which was the Green Mill Cocktail Lounge, by the way, which is amazing. Yeah. Really famous old mob bar, blues bar in Chicago. But he when he blows up, all these things, it's also a metaphor, right, for the fact that he's brought this upon himself. He's blown his own life up by making the choices that he's made.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's also kind of showing you that mentality of he doesn't care if he lives or dies. So it's making good on what he said earlier, but also reinforcing the idea that he probably really isn't capable of having a normal life or even appreciating a normal life.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he may think that he can, but that ship sailed a long, long time ago. I mean, when he stole the $40 to put him in jail, that's when that I mean, now granted, going to jail for $40 is fucking stupid. But he made decisions earlier in his life that we don't know why or what or whatever, but it set him on this path. And it's, I don't know.
Title card at the end of the movie, one of my favorite things in movies.
What's that?
The title card was at the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
Yep.
I also made a note that 70s and 80s James Caan is the 80s and 90s Dennis Hopper, but I'm not really sure what I meant by that.
Think about that some more.
Yeah, that's got to cook a little bit more, but I typed it and I wanted to keep it. But it's got to cook a little bit more, I think, before I really know what I'm talking about there.
One quick note on, we mentioned the comfortably known Pink Floyd music at the end of the movie.
The guitar solo by David Gilmour. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Man Wanted, Comfortably Numb, couldn't get the rights. So then he had Tangerine Dream try to compose something that sounded like it, didn't like the results, ended up hiring Craig Safon, who is a pretty famous film composer in his own right. And Jeff, I think he did the music for Cheers.
Awesome.
Yeah. And he wrote the song Confrontation, which is very much a Pink Floyd Comfortably Numb ripoff, but just different enough to avoid any licensing issues.
Yeah.
What's fascinating to me is that the soundtrack album released in the United States has that track, but in Europe it doesn't. It has another Tangerine Dream track that was not used in the movie. So it's almost like they had a better contract rights or something, and they could keep the song that wasn't theirs off the soundtrack that has their name on it in the European markets. But yeah, both versions are out there. Kind of interesting. I have the track with Confrontation because, well, yes, it's a obvious Pink Floyd ripoff. I kind of like it. It's definitely got that David Gilmour guitar solo happening in there.
Oh, he also did the music for Angel.
Oh wow,
that series fucking follows me around like Jesus Christ. I can't get rid of it.
Like a venereal disease.
Yeah.
I like this. Oop, go ahead.
Oh, never mind. I shouldn't say what I was going to say. Keep going.
Good. I'll rescue you. I was going to say I like this movie. I think it does suffer from the story it's a necessity that you don't like James Caan, right? Like if you do like him, it would kind of ruin the movie, I think, because of the payoff at the end. But it suffers because of that too. Like my investment was low, but the shots and the story and the stuff that was happening was interesting enough to keep me involved. I just, at the end, I'm like, I don't care if he lives or dies, honestly, which I don't know. I wish there was more investment there, at least for me.
Well,
I can appreciate that. I think it's just, for me, it's more of a character study.
Yeah.
Right.
Rather than a character to root for, be invested in, right? And there's enough motivation. There's everything, like all of his choices make sense.
Yeah.
And there's enough there to hope for, even though ultimately, yes, you're disappointed. It's the only natural conclusion, right?
Right. Yeah. I think it definitely was.
It rings true, I guess. Yes.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that too. It's like I kind of, watching this movie, it was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, in the end, he doesn't deserve to get what he wants. And I'm not necessarily rooting for that, but I am very much curious where it goes from here. And you know, and honestly, like the only person in this whole movie that is, I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily dislike Okla or Barry. It's just that we don't see them enough to understand much more about them other than they are, to a certain extent, just simply utilities of Frank's.
Right.
I mean, Frank is in almost every scene of this movie. I mean, he's the only character you really get to know.
Yes.
Outside of the one scene in the diner with Jessie where she talks about her past. Yeah.
Yeah. And you do kind of like, there were times where it's like, gosh, you know, it'd be great if Tuesday Weld could get away from this fucking maniac. But at the same time, it's not like she was necessarily an angel either. You get a little bit of a peek that she wasn't exactly, I mean, she was willing to kind of let go of some scruples in order to just be with somebody who has some sense of kindness to her.
Yeah, you wonder what happens to her. I mean, she's got $400,000 and a baby in James.
Yeah.
Well, that kid grew up and
Joseph.
was on. That kid grew
Joseph.
up and became and was in Varsity Blues and is now on Hawaii Five-0. He's doing fine. He's doing great. He was a rapper for a little bit.
Is Tuesday Weld's kid famous? Am I missing a connection?
No, I was talking about Scott Caan.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Sorry.
No. Yeah. I think this is still. I think this is a very good movie about bad people.
Yeah.
Again, it's like Taxi Driver is the kind of level that I put that into. Maybe not as good as Taxi Driver. Pretty good. Pretty darn good.
One note I had that was I thought about, and I said it out loud to Susan while we were watching it. It was when he goes into the business office, right? after his fence is killed, and then he's like leaving, and he's got his gun out, and all the people in the front, like the secretary pool or whatever, the typing pool, are out there and just like, what the hell is going on? I said to Susan, wouldn't it be funny if he just got the wrong place?
Sorry, I got the wrong place.
It's the wrong apartment or wrong office building.
Wrong plating
Goes
company.
in there, brandishes a weapon, and threatens people, and they're like, "What the fuck?"
He tells that one guy to sit down.
Yeah.
I like that. It's like, sit down. It's like, well, that's his.
Everybody else.
I
like how he pulls the chair from the front of the guy's desk over to the side. That's good. That's power move.
That's
right
power
there.
move. Yeah, it's like,
Yep.
no, there's nothing that's going to separate us here.
Yep.
Give me my money.
It's my money and I need it now. That's what James Caan said.
Turned into Rook Assault.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is good stuff. I mean, this is a really, I like it.
I'm into it. What's next week?
Next week,
Wicker.
Oh boy, Jason, I know you were excited.
Chuck
That's why you asked.
Yeah,
Yep.
we're into this one.
I'm curious about how I'm going to feel about this because when I first saw this movie about, I don't know, 16, 17 years ago or so, I was like, but it's better than that other one.
My God.
It's way better than the Nicolas Cage one. The Nicolas Cage one, by the way, it's the Wicker Man. The Nicolas Cage movie version is funny in YouTube videos. The movie as a whole is fucking maddening.
Well, we'll talk about this next week, but
are you going to watch both versions?
No, I'm not going to watch it. But
why do I always have to do the fucking?
You're going to watch both versions? Oh man, well,
I've never watched the new one, so
there you go.
Well, there is something worse, and it's The Wicker Tree, which is the sequel to Wicker Man by the same director, Robin Hardy. It is worse than the remake. It is
interesting.
So there was a sequel to the original?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know anything about that.
It was released maybe 10 years ago or so, and it is, I don't even know why it exists. It is so bad, it's shocking.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, maybe someday we can do a bad sequels month and do that, Roadhouse 2, and
I'll subject myself to The Wicker Tree for next week's episode, just so I can I can talk a little bit about it. But I don't want to talk much about it because it is terrible.
Well, that's great. I am going to just watch the one movie, and I'm going to be doing fine.
Oh, there's 3 cuts of The Wicker Man too. It's one of those.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to watch whichever one's available to me. Let me see.
The one that's on Shudder, which is probably what you'll watch, is I want to say it's the original cut, which is fine.
Perfect. I'll take it.
I will rewatch the extended cut. There is a director's cut, which is weird, that cuts out most of what was in the extended cut. But it's a little bit different than the theatrical. Anyway, we'll talk all about all of this next week. But
as you can see, one of us is very excited. The others are somewhat excited, and the other one's like, "Hey, I'll show up and do the job."
I really like this movie. I'm most excited to show it to Steph for the first time.
Oh boy, I don't know how
reaction's going to be.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I love it.
So anyway,
that'll be fun. That'll be fun for you.
So that is next week. The Wicker Man, 1973. Next Monday, Also on filmseizure.com. My episode of Monster Mondays is Fiend Without a Face. It's where the little brain monsters come and attack, and they get shot and axed, and it's fantastic. That's good stuff. That's another Criterion movie. Surprisingly, I have no idea why, but it is, and it's great. So that is Monday. Both of those things can be found on filmseizure.com. Follow us Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can also subscribe to us at SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, TuneIn, Spotify. Although I don't blame you if you don't want to support Spotify anymore these days. I get it. That's quite all right. And we're also on YouTube, so you can listen to us on YouTube if you want to there. This Friday on my website, bmovieanima.com, is the end of Tinto Brass Month with Monomore.
How many, on a scale of 4, how many buttholes? Yeah.
Okay, so I would say, let's see, Black Angel gets the full 4 buttholes. Monomore is probably I say 3 buttholes.
All right.
Out of 4. Okay.
So for baseline for me, how many did Cheeky get?
2, but that's 1 butthole for the movie and 1 butthole for our lead star in that, because she is drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah, she's outrageously beautiful.
Yep. So that's that. Private gets maybe 2.5 buttholes. So
maybe a half butthole for that amazing opening scene in Cheeky.
Ooh. Yeah, the credits alone are fantastic.
Yeah,
I don't know. Anyway,
all right.
Yeah, Tinto Brass is a curious guy, and he likes to show buttholes. That's what we're getting at here, everybody. So anyway, I guess we probably should wrap this up before.
Yeah, we should. We've devolved into buttholes.
Yeah. So anyway, I highly recommend Thief. I think most of us do.
Yep.
Chuck, your concerns, I think, are absolutely valid with the movie.
Most definitely.
Anyway, so until next week, when we take a trip to a weirdo island with it's Edward Woodward, right? That's who's the star of that.
Oh yeah,
which is it's hard to say, by the way. Good luck next week on that, everybody. Anyway, until then, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I am Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.